you very much. Good afternoon. First of all, I'm honored to be here today with you. And I will be talking about something that is somehow related to the previous intervention, but not that firmly grounded in refugee issues and Austrian issues. It's a little bit of a broader picture, let's say. I'm here to talk about migrant smuggling. This is something that we hear a lot about in the media, but we hear it very often interchangeably with human trafficking. So I hope I will be able to bring a little bit of clarity to you today. I first came across migrant smuggling about 8 years ago. At that time I was working for an NGO at the national level, and I was helping asylum seekers fill their asylum claims. And I was asking them, okay, how did you come all the way to France from Sri Lanka, Guinea, Haiti? So they would tell me their stories, who helped them, how much they paid, the agents, the travel agents to reach France. Maybe sometimes they would be given some passports with the name of someone else, but the picture was quite similar. Sometimes they were also given tricks to stay in the country. So it seems that these travel agents were doing a little bit more than just arranging a flight or a boat trip or a bus. These travel agents were actually smugglers, because the people were reaching France in an irregular manner in order to claim asylum in France. This corresponded to a time when the international community defined what the smuggling of migrants was. And the international community decided that it was a serious crime. In my daily work, I didn't really see an impact of this decision, and I didn't really see an impact on the journey of the migrants and refugees either. But what I know is that at that time, the migrants and refugees did not report abuse during the journey. I didn't really hear much about that. But what I knew is that both migrants and refugees were using the services of smugglers already back then. And then with time, I started seeing that the agents, slash smugglers, were coming along to the interviews with the migrants as interpreters. And that they were not really interpreting, they were giving some stories that were already made up. And I realized that they were the same stories. They were the same pictures being used. They were not really the stories of the people I had in front of me. And I also realized that actually the packages that the migrants and asylum seekers were paying was the trip, the documents to travel, and sometimes the story to guarantee results. And sometimes there were even arrangements that, okay, if you fail and you can't stay, well, maybe you have another try. It depends how much you pay. One day, I saw a young lady from Nigeria, which is quite beautiful, very nice. I saw her only once, and I helped her with her asylum case. I wrote down the story. I somehow felt that it was probably not hers. Then she disappeared. And I saw her again a few months later. She was pregnant, she was crying, her asylum request had been rejected. She was desperate, and she told me, I've been told to tell this story, it's not my story, can I start again? And then I realized that what I didn't see the first time is that she had not been smuggled, she had been a victim of trafficking. She had been exploited for prostitution, and she was pregnant as a result of it. The good thing though is that at that time, there was already a law in France to protect victims of trafficking. So she was able to be taken care of as a victim in France. And although she was not recognized as a refugee, she could still stay and protected as a victim of human trafficking. The definition of human trafficking at the international level was agreed upon at the same time as the definition of migrant smuggling. And there's a huge difference. It's the exploitation part of it. In human trafficking cases, you have a victim who has been exploited, and they have been exploited for different reasons, very often for forced labor or for prostitution, for example. Now I've moved on to the UN, and I advise states to respect their obligations under international law, and in particular under the Protocol Against the Smuggling of Migrants and the Protocol Against Human Trafficking. And I spend my time clarifying the difference between these two, even for states which are party to these instruments. I keep on telling them, okay, we're not talking about migration here, we're talking about organized crime. We're not talking about criminalizing migrants, we're talking about criminalizing those who make money on the back of the migrants, and sometimes put their life and safety in danger. I'm also really flagging to them that when you take measures against smuggling, you need to do it while protecting the rights of migrants and refugees. This is not an option. You can't ignore these obligations. They coexist, they're two sides of the same coin. And the only way you can have results is to work together. You can't do it on your own. And yet, we see that states still continue acting within their own borders. We see that they very often focus on the breaches of the law by the migrants, rather than looking at the criminal networks. And I wonder, okay, how can they respect their international obligations in that case? But also, why is that? Is it ignorance or is it a lack of political will? I think it's an important question. What we see is that, in the meanwhile, the criminal networks, they're laughing at us. They're laughing at us because no one's really taking real measures against them. There's no coordination, there's no cooperation across borders. So they continue making profits, and they do it while taking very little care of the migrants and the refugees. So far this year, there's been more than 3,000 deaths at the doors of Europe. This is the sickening truth. And we know that this is happening here. And we all know about what happened last summer in the doors of Vienna, with a truck where we found more than 70 bodies. We all saw the picture of the small island on a Turkish beach. This is really shocking. These smugglers we're talking about, they're not travel agents, like I heard 8 years ago. They want to maximize their profits. And to do that, they don't care about the life. They overload trucks, they overload boats, they just want to make the money on the back of the desperation of the people. And I think that we can do something about it. Don't you think that when something happens, something like this, these people should be put to justice? They should be in jail. They should not be sitting quietly in the country enjoying the profits they've made on the back of these desperate people. That's my opinion, and that's what we're trying to do at the international level, together with the states, which agreed that these were serious crimes that should be addressed. Now we have a framework. I mentioned the international framework. We have a framework that exists, but it's about putting it into action. It's also about looking at the bigger picture. Thinking, for example, about opening legal ways of migration, or giving access to protection to refugees. Because if refugees could access protection in Europe without using smugglers, obviously they would be safer. Don't you think? So, the Red Cross says that protecting people on the move is our collective responsibility. I think it is true. And I think that we, the people, have a role to play at different levels, including by promoting development, protection, justice, rule of law, and peace. We are lucky enough to live in democracies where we can voice our opinion. I think we need to do that. We need to do that, for example, by reading media reports with a critical eye, by questioning the political discourse, and also by using our votes wisely. For humanity. That's my perspective, but I think it also reflects the UN perspective. There may be many criticism about this old institution, the UN, which is 70 years now. I think this idea of working together towards the same principle is still something that we should all defend, and the youth first of all. I want to still believe, and I hope that you're really joining me in that. So thank you very much.